Let me show you 8 simple AI prompts that can transform your freelancing workflow. And this will include cutting your proposal time down from an hour to just a couple of minutes. I'll work through a simple example of automating annoying payment reminders so you don't have to do it manually, and also resizing images in a single click without opening a photo editing app. And this last one enabled me to cancel Adobe Creative Cloud, which saved me over $700 a year. That's why I love uncovering these game-changing AI prompts that can literally double your output, or in some specific cases, 10x or more. And just an FYI, I'm going to put all of these prompts that we discussed today, along with 3 bonus system prompts, into a free PDF that you can download from the link in the description below. Let's dive right into the first example. This prompt is for a proposal template, and I'm using what I normally use, which is XML syntax for my prompts. And this is just to divide the sections of your prompt so the LLM knows the difference between different contexts and the task that you're asking it to do. So I have this proposal template using Markdown format that has some placeholders here along with the headings, project scope, pricing, timeline, client requirements. And then I also provide an example with a made-up company here, Top Roof Solutions. And it goes through this exact template and fills in all the details. And then this is where you're going to paste in your description of work. So you can go ahead and have a conversation with this client, write down the basic notes of what they want, and you can even dictate this. So a lot of times I'll just go into a Google Doc and use voice to text to just describe what needs to happen, and then I'll paste that text right into here in the project detail section. And then down here, this is all the instructions of the prompt. So I'm asking to create a professional freelance proposal based on the project details. I ask for a fair project price and explain that calculation clearly in a sentence or two. I'm telling it to use the proposal template that's wrapped in this template tag and use the proposal example for the basis as to how to write it. Now, the reason that I did this in Markdown format is because this easily pastes into Google Docs. So you can create this, copy and paste it into a Google Doc, which I'll show you in a second here, and then export that as a PDF, which is easy to send to your client. So let me go ahead and copy and paste this entire prompt, and I'll bring up my preferred way of interacting with AI, and that is through this desktop app chat box. And I use the API for ChatGPT and Claude. That allows me to just pay per usage instead of paying the monthly subscription fee. And I go into a lot more details about that and just more higher level prompt engineering, including the XML structure, in another video I just released. That's basically a prompt engineering 101 tutorial. So I'll link that up in the top right. You might want to just go ahead and bookmark that and watch it later. You can see right here, I was asking questions about gardening. And basically what I do is I create system prompts that are specific to these roles over here. So for this one, I'm going to go into my Markdown formatter since that's what we're asking for. I'm going to clear the context from my previous conversation, and I'll paste in our template, and then let me paste in a description of work here. So you can see I'm doing one for this company, Greenscapes Landscaping. Simple, easy to use, pages for home, about, services, portfolio, and contact. They want to be able to add photos of their work and a few testimonials, along with a contact form so people can reach them via email. To start, I'm going to register the domain and set up hosting on my SiteGround account. So up here, this is where you can choose the model between OpenAI, Claude, and a bunch of other services. These are some of their newer models, GPT 4.1, which I think this is only accessible through the API. GPT 4.0 is the upgraded version that you get, I think, like 5 or 10 questions with the free account. And then you have to upgrade to use that more consistently. And then after that, it'll default to the GPT 4.0 Mini, which is the cheapest model. And then these ones that start with the O, these are the thinking models, which you usually want to use for more complex questions. I think this is straightforward enough that we can use either GPT 4.0 or 4.1. So let's just hit enter and see what comes out of this. This is the Markdown format. So let me copy this. So if you right-click in a Google Doc, you could do this paste from Markdown. So there you go. There's your basis for the proposal. Obviously, if you want, you could create a template using a Google Doc. But overall, it does a really good job of both writing up the proposal and estimating the correct price. So let's move on to the next one. And this is for a competitor ad analysis. So obviously, one of the advantages of the AI tools nowadays is that it works with images. I'm going to do a couple examples of these from ads that I saved a while ago. So these are the 2 ads that I'll test out with this prompt. I'm going to copy the one down here, this Google ad, because I actually like that it has different headlines. Most ads are just going to have these simple keywords like this one, roofer services, South Jersey. But I like that this one has tired of no-show contractors, hate high-pressure sales. It definitely hits on more emotional points. And then this one over here, this is just an Angie's List ad. So let's go back to this prompt here. So this one, we paste in our ad here if it's text. Otherwise, we just paste in the screenshot. And then I say, analyze this competitor advertisement and extract all the principles on why it's effective. The goal is to use these principles as a template to write many more future ads in the same style. Make inline edits where you take the most pertinent chunk of copywriting in quotes and directly under it you offer the broader abstract reason why this wording works. And then I ask it to give a name to this ad style and then give me 3 similar ad styles at the end. So for this one, I'm going to try out 2 examples. I'm going to do this using one of the free services. So let me go to Gemini for this. And I'll paste in this prompt. And because I have an image, I'm just going to delete that and change this reference here to the image. We'll start with the Angie's List one. And let's see what it says. Now, this is using Gemini's more powerful model that's smaller, 2.5 Flash. Their upgraded one is 2.5 Pro, which is kind of like their version of a thinking model, which is used for reasoning, math, and code. So obviously this one did pull out some of the text within that image. They're calling this the authenticity and trust ad style. And like I wanted it to do, it does the inline referencing to the text within the ad. And then down here, the last section, the similar ad styles, we can use the problem solution reframe, the myth versus reality, and the before and after. So let me plug this into my preferred role that I use for this, and that's the copywriter one. And let me copy in this image. And for this one, we're going to use the latest version of Claude, which they just released their Claude Sonnet 4. And the date here, you can see May 14th. So that was just a couple of weeks ago. So for this one, we're using both the copywriter role system prompt, which if I open this, you can see how long this is. I have a lot of different specifics about copywriting. And actually one thing now that I'm looking at it down the bottom, I think I have this formatting for WordPress as well. So we might get formatting for WordPress accidentally. In fact, I think I'm just going to add that at the end and say, just give me this in Markdown, not WordPress format. And then that combined with the more powerful model, we should get a better answer. Again, this is something you got to test. Sometimes a more powerful model gives you a much better answer. Sometimes it's pretty comparable to one of the cheaper models. That's one of the reasons I like using this program with the API, because I can jump around between the various companies and models that are offered. So let's see what we get out of this. And right away, it's giving us a pretty similar thing. This is called the graffiti authenticity ad style. So that's a little bit more specific. But on this one, it does kind of reference more of the visual aspect. So you can see raw, unpolished visual appeal, the emotional validation hook. And then if we scroll down here, they link this up to one of the things that was in my system prompt, and this is the problem solution lead structure. So this is a note that I got from a copywriting book that I read, and I took those notes and I plugged it into the system prompt. So this is one example of how the system prompt customizes this answer versus just using one of the free services. And then here, there's similar ad styles. It's a lot more specific to this ad. So as an advertiser, it really gives you a lot of ideas quickly that would probably take you tons of time to just go out there and research yourself. So let's try out the next ad. I'm just going to take a screenshot of this bottom ad here. And I'll go back to my program here. Let me clear the context, and I will just paste in that image and then go back up here and copy and paste my text for the prompt. This one agitates the problem of people that are dealing with contractors who don't show up on time and that are pressuring them to buy something right now. It picked out the authority reference for an award they won, highlights the risk reversal for financing, warranties, licensed and bonded. Showing the address here, this is linking up your Google business with the Google ad platform so that it can show the address that you have on the map, your verified address. And this basically breaks the ad down into a template structure. And in the link in the description, that PDF that you can download going through these prompts, I do include a simplified version of my copywriting role. Next up, let's test this copywriter role, landing page copywriter. And I generated a fake landing page for a local coffee subscription service. I'm just asking it to double the conversion rate. I'm going to paste in an HTML element, and I ask for this HTML file back without altering the elements or the classes, just editing the content within it. So let me copy this prompt. I'll go to my copywriter role, and I'll use it here. And then let me paste in the HTML, which I'll show you that in a second right here, what it looks like before. And I just used ChatGPT to generate this landing page. And here's a look at it. So in one prompt, I got this really nice looking landing page. And I also put out a tutorial going through how to customize HTML. Basically, I just like generating options for these various sections or elements, which if you want to check out that tutorial, I'll link it up in the top right. But for now, I'm just going to ask it to change this text, and we'll see what it gives us, and we'll compare it. And the other thing I'm going to ask for here is just to give it the body, because in the head here, this is where I have all the styles and the CSS, and I really don't want to change that. I just wanted to change the text. So I'll just add one line to this, return body element only. I'll copy and paste this into a separate file, and we'll compare and contrast. So here's our body element, and here's the new landing page. So you can see going back and forth. The tagline here on the old one is fresh local coffee delivered weekly to your doorstep. And in the new one, they really got creative here and said the coffee that made Sarah cry tears of joy at 6 a.m. So you really do have to kind of rein it in and build your system prompt over time. You're going to get some output that you don't like. Same thing here with the title. Finally, coffee that doesn't taste like burnt water versus your coffee or schedule. So just like I mentioned with generating options for HTML, I might go through this instead of just trying to do the whole page, generating 10 different options for the heading or 10 different options for a slogan or tagline, and mix and matching. Let's come down to this next section and see what we got here. In the old one, it's just why choose us, freshly roasted, support local, pause or cancel anytime. This one's a little more emotionally inspiring. Here's what makes coffee lovers obsessed. More specific here, roasted on Monday, in your cup on Wednesday, so you know it's fresh. Meet the roaster, a little bit more personalized. And the same thing with the subscription. It gives you a specific scenario here. Going on vacation, you can just hit pause as opposed to pause or cancel anytime. And then lastly, we have our options. This just gave you the standard one-word tags, starter, standard, enthusiast. And here they named them, solo sipper, coffee couple, flavor explorer. And they also added one line down here at the bottom. I don't know if this calculation comes out correct, but it says that's 47 cents per cup. You can see here on the first version, there was no bold text under those first two lines. And then here they give you the most popular choice, never drink boring coffee again. And instead of the choose plan button, you got start my subscription. And they also, looks like they expanded the testimonials down here, which obviously you want them to be real. You don't want to make up a testimonial. So really AI is an easy way to get a couple passes of this and incrementally improve it faster than you would be able to if you were just doing this all yourself. Next up here, we have turning a transcript into a blog post. And this is something that I've done with my YouTube tutorials. So for this prompt, we're asking to turn this transcript and format it for publishing, make it professionally written and cohesively organized, keep the same tone overall at this transcript, come up with logical headings, but don't overdo them, use 3 to 4 H2 elements. And I do find it, whenever you're going to do something with Markdown or at least a blog post where you have a specific format that you're looking for, I would include exactly how many elements you want of each type. You can expand on this a lot because if you don't, it will sometimes do a very boring looking blog. I'm also telling it that it can link up any third-party tools that are well known like Gmail or Dropbox. And I ask for this target equals underscore blank, which this is what opens that in a new tab as opposed to in the same window as the website they're currently on. Then we ask for that in Markdown, which again, you can copy and paste to Google Docs if you want. Then once the article's written, I'm asking for 10 title ideas and a short meta description that I can easily copy and paste into Yoast SEO, or you could do into your raw code. So let me pick out a short YouTube video of mine, and I'll show you how this works. And here's a good one. This is only 1 minute and 45 seconds. So let me come down here and grab the transcript. And I don't think there's an easy way to download this, so I usually just come up here, toggle the timestamps, and just copy and paste it. And I should mention that because I've done this before, I've really upgraded that prompt that I just showed you into multiple steps. So let me just go ahead and show you the first step here. I have a YouTube transcriber role, and basically that just allows me to paste in this transcript, which as you can see is just a lot of broken sentences, and it's really just one long sentence fragment. There's no punctuation or anything in here. So all this role does is turns this into coherent paragraph text. So I can use a cheap model for this. I'll do GPT-40 Mini. You'll see how it cleans it up very nicely. And then from here, I can copy this, or actually let me copy the prompt first, and then I'll paste this in. And for this one, I'm going to use my author role. I've definitely edited this one a lot. So let me clear the context there. I'll paste in this. And let me see if I can go back into this YouTube transcriber role. And I'll copy this. We'll go back to the author role, and I will paste in the transcript here. And on this one, I'm using a better model. Usually I like to do that for any type of creative writing. So I'm going to do Claude Sonnet 4, and let's check out how it organizes this blog post. So for this one, it gave me the title ideas first, which isn't a huge deal, but usually if you have the article first, then that article is in the context window when it starts to generate the title. So it probably would be a little bit more specific. And now that I'm looking at it, it gave me the title ideas up front and at the bottom here. But you can see it did a pretty nice job. And even something like this where it highlights a code block here, it just makes it stand out a little more so it's not just boring paragraph text. And as I previously mentioned, I built an AI article generator that goes through, I think, 5 steps now, or I think this free version may be 4. If you go to my website here, you can test this tool out under the tools section. And all you have to do is briefly describe your topic in a few words or a paragraph or 2, and it'll go through all these steps. So let me just do a quick example here. I'll say 5 easy ways to increase your freelancing income. And I'll hit create article, and you can see it's working down here. It usually takes about 30 seconds. It'll go through and give you a status at each step. So you can see the first one is brainstorming ideas, generating an outline, generating keywords for SEO. And this one is using the cheaper model, GPT-40 Mini, the free version here on my website. I do have an upgraded version that I use, which you can purchase to customize it yourself. And I'll show you that in just a second here. So you can go ahead and download it as a text file. Considering we just did this from, just a handful of words here, it really does a great job, even with the free models, when you chain together a couple different steps, as opposed to trying to do it all in one step. So the main difference between this and the upgraded version, which I'll show you over here, first of all, this one I have running on my local host on my computer. And it has the same input box, but it uses the upgraded models, and then there's one additional step here, actually 2 additional steps, in that it'll format your article for WordPress specifically, because that's what I use for the majority of my websites and my client websites. And on top of that, it actually hooks in with the WordPress API. So you can create an app password for your website on your WordPress admin, and this will automatically post that as a WordPress draft to your site. But I got this working now where it's generating really high quality articles. I think we were producing articles that were around like 300 words or 500 words, and this is pumping out like 2,000 word articles that are super in depth. So if you're interested in checking out this article generator, go ahead and check out the free version, which I'll link up in the description below, as well as the paid version if you want to purchase that and install it on your own computer. And if you do purchase it, I do have a complete installation tutorial that'll take you through those steps. Next up, we'll try and write some social media posts. And for this, I'm going to copy and paste one of my blog posts, and we'll see how it transforms that story into shorter snippets based on this prompt here. I'm asking to take elements of the narrative within story, which I'll paste in here, and write as many social media posts as you can in the following categories. And this is optional if you want to categorize your social media posts. Now, the next couple instructions here are important because, as we saw in the coffee landing page example, unless you specify it, it's likely going to make up stories. So I say that every social media post should be storytelling based on the story. Never make up any elements of the story. But I do say that you can add minor details on top of true parts of the story to make it more compelling. I'm asking to make it extremely conversational and casual. And I give an example here because this is common. Starting with a 2-word phrase with a colon, it's a bad practice because that reads like a written title. So I'm saying talk like a human speaks aloud. Here's another funny one. I mentioned here to put your age. And the reason I did this is because the first time I tried to write some social media posts without this added to the prompt, it wrote it kind of like a teenager. So I wanted to make sure that it was in the right tone based on whatever social content I'm trying to create. And then in terms of the formatting, I'm asking for a spreadsheet format with 2 columns. So let me grab one of my older blog posts and we'll put this to work. And I think this is a good one. I made this video and blog post about web design freelancing, 5 things that I wish I knew. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste all this, and I'll just paste it in as plain text. So for this one, I'm going to use my social media role. Now, this one I haven't tested out as much as some of the other ones like the copywriter or the author. So this probably has a lot of room for improvement. Just let me copy this prompt into here. And then I will copy the blog text and put it right here in the story. And then I'll just make up a couple categories here. Let me change the model to Claude Sonnet 4. And let's see what we get. Looks like we're probably at about 10 to 15 so far. So the first one, I used to think freelancing websites like Upwork were the golden ticket when I started out. Boy, was I wrong. After months of competing with thousands of other freelancers for scraps, I realized something important. These platforms take a massive cut of your earnings. The work pays terribly and you're constantly hunting for the next gig. The real money comes from building relationships and finding clients who need ongoing work, not one-off projects. So this very accurately represents what's in this article. I know that for sure. And then you can go ahead and copy and paste this into a spreadsheet or whatever format you like if you'd like to keep a library of your social media posts. For this next example, we're going to build a payment due notifier, and we're going to jump into Google Sheets to do this along with Google Apps Script, which lets you automate emails from your Gmail account. So I have that goal in mind here. I'm also giving it the columns: client name, client email, invoice data, amount due, payment terms, and reminder last sent. And then I'm asking for a column with a calculation that calculates the payment due date based on the invoice date and the payment terms. So net 15 is 15 days later, net 30, 30 days later. And then I describe the functionality that I want. So I say write a Google Apps Script that checks the sheet every day and automatically sends a friendly payment reminder email to the client if today's date is the due date or if payment is overdue and status is not paid. And you can control that easily by setting up a Google Apps Script trigger. So I'll show you that once we get this set up. And then I'm saying to include the client's name, invoice date, and due date in the email body. Log the date and reminder last sent after sending the email to avoid duplicates. And actually, this line is mentioning that we don't want to do it more than once a week. I say resend if it's past due and the reminder last sent is more than 7 days ago and status is not paid. And I'm pretty familiar with Google Apps Script, but if you're not, I put these last lines in here. Explain step-by-step how to set up the sheet, the script, and authorize it, because you usually have to do that before it starts sending. And I'm asking to make the instructions clear for somebody who's never written code before, and to include all of the code and the sample email content. So let's do this and see what happens. And for this, I'm going to use my software developer role. And my preferred model for code is Claude. So I like using Claude Sonnet. I've gotten the least amount of errors with Claude Sonnet. So I think this should give us a good bit of code here on the first shot. And it's doing a nice job breaking this down into steps. And now we're writing the Google Apps Script. And now here is the email text. And the last step here is the authorization and testing it. And they're really doing a nice job documenting this. They're even giving us a whole sort of like README file on how to use this system. So this is a very complete answer. I like this a lot. And I have a sheet open, and I just need to set up these columns. And they also specify the format of the column. So let me do this really quickly, and I'll jump back into this video when I get that done. And I can copy this formula for F2, the payment due date column. So I'll paste that right up in here. And we will load this in with some sample data. So let me see if I can just copy and paste this, or if it adds any weird spaces or tabs. And I think that may have just overwritten my formula that I just put in there. I'll just put pending in the status column here. And you could do data validation, so this was a drop down as opposed to me just typing in any value. And let me just copy and paste this formula back into that and see if it works. And this worked pretty nicely. It's got the invoice date as January 15th and the due date as February 14th. This one's net 15, January 20th, and February 4th. And let me just fill these emails with my own personal emails so we can see if they get delivered. And let's move on to creating the app script. So we got to go to Extensions, App Script, and copy and paste this code. So let me go back into our Google Sheet. And we do Extensions, App Script, and here's your coding environment for App Script. So they have just a blank function. You can create files, and these files are GS files, which again, that's just JavaScript along with Google Script. Those are functions that allow you to interact with Google services. So I'll just name this invoice emailer, and I will paste in my function. We'll save it. And if we look at this, there's a couple functions here. We have check and set reminders. We have check if reminders needed. We have send reminder email. And then we have test reminder. Now, when you run this from here, you're going to see the console log window pop up at the bottom, and you can print to that. And that's an easy way to debug by using this console log statement, just like JavaScript. And this test reminder just runs the check and send reminders. And obviously, this is going to use some of these other functions. And right down here, this is that Google Gmail function, Gmail app. And we're sending an email through this function, which makes it very easy. And this is all the email text along with the variables that are inserted. So this is where you select the function that you want to run. So like I said, I think we're going to run the test reminder function, which really all that does is runs this function, but also has the console log statements. So we'll run this, and we'll get the authorization pop up. We got to review the permissions, and this is where you select your account, and it's going to give you this unsafe message or warning. And you have to click Advanced, this Go To, and then just verify that you want to use these services. So basically, it just figures out what Google services that you're linking in the code. So because we have that Gmail app line, it basically says that we're able to read, compose, send, and permanently delete all email from Gmail. But obviously, that's only going to happen if we're doing it through the code. In this one, we're just sending email. So don't worry about this. Just hit the continue button. We got it running. And it says that it sent the 2 reminders. Let me check my email and see if we got those emails. And here they are. You can see the subject line is payment reminder invoice from with the invoice date, and it says how many days it's overdue. Let's jump into one of these emails and we'll see the email text. Just want to follow up on the invoice from this date. The payment was due, which was 478 days ago. I understand sometimes invoices can get overlooked in busy schedules, and I just wanted to send a friendly reminder. And obviously, we need to fill in our placeholders here. I didn't do that. But for one prompt, I think it did a pretty good job. Now let's go back into our spreadsheet, and you can see we have our reminder last sent. I'm going to try and run this one more time, and let me see if it skips it because we sent the reminder today. So we'll run it again, and there we go. You see we don't have a console log saying that it sent the email. Now, like I said, if you want to do this on a schedule, you can jump over here to the triggers. And by the way, whenever these functions run, you can also see them in the executions. But we'll jump into the triggers here, and this is where you can set up a trigger. You choose which function you want to run, and you can either deploy these as versions if you want to do version control, or you can choose this head, which just means it's going to run whatever code is saved into your Google Apps script right now. So with the versions, you actually have to push out your updates to a specific version and deploy it using this deploy button up here. But I usually just choose the head for most projects since they're small. And then this is where the trigger happens. You don't want to do from spreadsheet. You want to do a time-driven trigger, and you can choose to do it hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. And if there's any failures, you'll get emails for that. So that is how you can run an AppScript function. And AppScript is useful for a lot. I mean, I have tons of spreadsheets that hook into AppScript, so I highly recommend you start experimenting with it now that you don't have to write the code yourself. This next prompt here is inspired by a Windows batch file that I created, which resizes images in bulk. I just throw them all into a folder and double click this, and all the resized files go into a different folder. And this was basically mimicking what I was doing with Adobe Photoshop's image processor. Once I had this working, I knew I could cancel Adobe Creative Cloud because resizing images, surprisingly enough, was about 90% of the things I was using Photoshop for. And everything else I was able to replace with this free online program called Photopea. So this prompt is basically just explaining what I did in that bat file, and I'll show you that in a second. But you can see that I'm asking it to look for all images in a folder and process them by creating 2 resized copies using FFmpeg command line. So I have this set to 1,000 pixels wide and 300 pixels wide. I'm asking to keep the aspect ratio. The bigger one has the -large extension to the file name, and the smaller one has the -thumb. And just like the last one, I'm asking it for clear step-by-step instructions for installing FFmpeg and where to put the bat file and how to use it for beginners. So instead of going through the AI chat for this one, you could try it out yourself and customize it however you'd like. But I'm just going to show you my script, which this one I have it going at 800 pixels and 350 pixels. But again, this is a .bat file, and it just lets you run command line statements through this bat file. So the first thing we do is we set all of our directories. So you have your source directory where you're going to put all your bigger images, your full-size images, which might be 4,000 pixels wide. And I usually just create a folder, a subfolder within that as the output directory. And then within that output directory, I have a subfolder for the thumbnail images. And then you have the path to run the FFmpeg. Like I said, you can download this as an exe file. And I customize mine even further to use this EXIF tool, which the EXIF data, that is like the GPS or the latitude and longitude that are embedded into the photo, which I use for some of my clients because they want to put their project photos on their website, including this address. So I noticed that when I first did this, the FFmpeg was just ignoring some of this EXIF data. So you're likely not going to need to add this line to it unless you have the same issue. I'm really no expert with this bat script syntax. I just let the AI write it, and then I test it out, and if I get any errors, I plug that back into the conversation. But if I double-click this, it'll just highlight where we're actually calling this FFmpeg executable file, and you can see this is where we're doing the scaling to 800 pixels. This is the aspect ratio setting, and then down here, it just duplicated for this 350 pixel size. And I dug into my saved AI conversations, and I actually found the initial chat where I was asking for this. So you can see my question, I specifically tell it that I'm using Photoshop File Scripts image processor to resize photos in bulk. I was already using this desktop resizer folder, and I mentioned one of the options that I had set within this resize to fit, along with the pixel width and height. And I just say that I want to recreate it, and I asked for 3 methods. So it gave me these 3 command prompt options: ImageMagick, PowerShell with .NET Framework, and FFmpeg. And I already had FFmpeg installed. If you go to my next question here, you can see I mentioned that I have it installed along with the folder that it was in. I referenced these subfolders in that folder because at this point I didn't know how to use it via command line. And I'm asking it to create that batch file. So this was the first version that it gave me, but I had to go through 3 chats on 3 separate days to get this working exactly as I intended. And you can see, I mean, this is really how you have to deal with AI. It's not just putting in one prompt and getting the perfect result every time. You have to look at it as someone that can guide you through these issues. The last one that I have included in this list is not a single prompt, but I included a series of follow-up questions that I asked when I was learning how to use Git. I had been doing version control with just using folders and copying and pasting them. So when I started to put together a couple new projects, I wanted to use better versioning. And this kind of just takes you through my thought process and might give you some ideas about how you can have a conversation with AI on any topic. So I knew GitHub existed as the website. I actually thought that was like the source of Git, but apparently Git is just software that you can run on your Windows PC. And immediately I downloaded the installer and I had questions on that. There was an unchecked option, add a Git bash profile to Windows Terminal. At this point, I didn't know whether you would interact with Git through the command line or whether there's some type of user interface. And as it turns out, there's both. So you can do it either way you want. And then I asked it to explain Git bash. I wanted to give it more context about how I was doing version control, which, like I said, it was just through folders and project directories that I was copying. I asked it to explain how Git is more efficient than manual versioning like I was doing. With Git, you can exclude files or folders from version tracking. So I was asking about the Git ignore syntax. This is just that file that tells Git what it doesn't have to include in the versioning. And at this point, I decided that I wanted to use Git through the command line, through that Git bash. And I wanted a markdown cheat sheet of common Git commands. So this has been really helpful. So there's a bunch of different use cases for AI. Don't forget that you can download these 8 AI prompts as a PDF file from my homepage here. Just go to aiproductivitysecrets.com, and I'll link that up in the description below. That not only includes these 8 prompts, but I'll also give you the 3 bonus system prompts for my copywriter role, my software developer role, and my author role. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more AI prompting videos in the future. I've been having a lot of fun learning these, and things are only going to get better from here. Thanks so much for making it to the end, and I'll link up a couple other videos here if you want to keep on learning.